So while assembling the gear train, I'll just show what you need to look for. So if I can sketch it here, the oil well, what I showed, tapers like this, and there is a hole which flattens up like that. This is the cross section of the jewel, and this is where we're going to place the oil. This is also the end we just cleaned. This is where the gear would sit. So once the gear sits, the pivot of the gear sticks out through the central hole, and it ends up somewhere about there. So this is a steel pivot which sticks out. So even though you're assembling the gear on this end, the pivot should be visible from the other end because a small part of it sticks out, and that is what you should look for when you're assembling the watch. And once you place oil, it shouldn't be too much, it shouldn't be till the brim here, or it shouldn't be too little. It should be just so that the surface tension keeps the oil in this shape. Now this is by surface tension alone. This is the shape that the oil takes once it is in there. So this is the cross section, and on the top view we should be able to see it somewhat like that, and in the bottom there is just a single hole where we put the gear pivot in. So this is what we are aiming when we put oil there. Now I have here the main plate, the cannon pinion, as well as the center wheel separated out, and this is the last thing that we removed out of the watch. So this is the first thing we're going to assemble into the moment. So how I'm going to do that? Well, first I'm just going to clean the cannon pinion with some Rodico. There is the reason why it's called as a cannon pinion is because it basically looks like a cannon that is used in warfare, a cannon with a pinion at its base. So now my aim is to clean that pinion and also the front portion of the cannon pinion. Now this is the part onto which the minute hand sits directly, so it's essential to have it quite clean. And now I'll take the center wheel, and the center wheel has a gear on one end and a kind of a pipe on the other end, and this pipe is through which the seconds hand would the pinion for the seconds hand would pass. I'm going to push it into Rodico and remove it. Now the gear that is on the outer periphery, to clean that I'm just going to hold it in the tweezer and roll it over the Rodico just like that. You should just roll it so that it completes at least one complete revolution. So you should be able to see the gear marks left on the Rodico. That means that the gear has dug into Rodico, and that's what we want. Any kind of a small dirt that is trapped in between these teeth should be removed now by Rodico. Now next thing I'm going to do is to just clean the centermost jewel where these parts would sit, just so, on either end. Now I had showed before disassembling that these two parts stand without any other support. They're friction fitted, and that's how we're going to assemble it again. So to do that, the procedure what I follow is, first I take the cannon pinion and then I place it in one of these holes of the riveting block. I'm sure it is possible by other means as well, but this is what I do all the time. So once I place it in there, I just need to lubricate the middlemost jewel a little bit here. Now if you observe here, you see that the jewel is different from the other jewels that is found in the watch. That is, this doesn't have an oil cup, instead it is a straight through hole, and I'm just going to place a drop of oil in there inside the walls, and a bit here on the surface where the center wheel would run, and a bit more on this side where the cannon pinion would run, just on the outer periphery, just so. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it in this way so that the jewel which I just lubricated, which is the middlemost jewel, should align with the cannon pinion that I've placed here in this way. Just need to get it right there exactly. Once that is okay, I'm going to take the center wheel and place it in there and let it go into the cannon pinion. I think I moved it a little. There you go, and place it in there. and press it in the middle so that it just locks into the cannon pinion. See, the cannon pinion is installed. So I'll just push it down. I'm trying to hold the center wheel from below, and I'm pushing the cannon pinion from this end, and that should be good enough. I'll just clean the center wheel here with a bit of Rodico because I just touched it. That's it. So what I do at this point is I take this blower and blow some air on it. Now if it's a good fit, it should rotate freely, just like that. So that is a good sign that the center wheel is a good fit. So we can continue with the rest of the assembly, which should be way easier than what we have done so far. So we're done with all the parts which would take time. Now it's the simpler parts. So first thing that I usually tend to assemble is the gear train. So I'll take out all the gears that goes into the gear train. Let's start assembling that one by one. That is the spring that holds the center second pinion down. We have all these parts. We need to assemble that. Before that, I think we need to assemble the bridge that goes over the keyless works. I almost forgot about that one. So let me get that bridge out and let me assemble it. So this particular bridge also comes on the center wheel, so it's quite essential to assemble it before we go any further. And I think this is the proper orientation. I'm sorry. Okay, so this bridge I'm going to clean it a bit with Rodico before I install it. You can see here in the middle there is this small recess, a circular recess where the center wheel would run. So I'm going to place a drop of oil in there. Now the basic idea is to place a drop of oil everywhere there is mechanical contact between two moving parts, and that's what we're doing here. And I'm going to place the bridge right about there, like there. Yeah, that should be it. Just press it into its place, and I think it needs a couple of screws. Yeah, it should lock like that. And after that we need to put a couple of screws to hold it in place. When I mentioned before that at one point the camera fell on the parts box, what I didn't realize was one of the screws had actually fallen off the box, and just now when I was taking the parts out I realized that. Thankfully the screw was just here on my bench, so I was able to find it. Now let us install this particular spring. Now I have not screwed this plate down yet, it is just fitted into its place, just pressed into its place. So while installing this spring, you need to make sure which part is up and which part is down. Now I'm just going to clean it with a bit of Rodico. Be very careful because this is quite a delicate part which can easily get bent. So you can see that the part is bent right here. This part right here should be bending upwards, that is, it should be bending towards me when I install it, just like that. Now there should be two projections here, or dowel pins, where two holes here should align, and I should be able to just press it into its place. That's it. Need to just keep it there and press it. Or if what else I can do is I'll just thread the screw down a couple of turns, and then I can just push it in. So I'll take the screw out for that. Let me thread it in. some reason it is just sticking to the tweezers, and once it's in its place, just going to place the screw right there. And thread it. It should be secure enough. Yep. And I need another screw for the plate right here. That's it. So that place is now securely fitted in its place, and I can start assembling the rest of the parts. So before I assemble the gears and the center pinion, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lubricate this jewel right here. This is another jewel which has a through to put up of oil right there. That's it. And I can start assembling the rest of the gears after I clean them with Rodico. So the first gear is, I'll just take this one and clean it up. I'm just going to push both the ends into the Rodico and then roll the outer periphery on the Rodico. Same thing with this. Push it in and roll it. Next is the escape wheel. Push both ends in, but be very careful because these are very delicate, and I'll roll such that the escape wheel digs slightly into the Rodico, but again not too much. I want the tips of the escape wheel to be quite clean because that is the part where the pallet lever would interact. So I'll just also clean this bridge from the underside. This is where the gears are going to sit. Now I can start assembling the rest of the gate train. Yeah, the wheel that I missed cleaning here is the center pinion, which I was just checking, and I'm just going to dip the end of it into the Rodico and push it into the Rodico and the other end as well. Now the second hand sits directly on this. I'll just install it right here in the middle, just like that. You should be able to insert it just there. It should be a good fit. After that, I'll go with the third wheel. Now I'm a bit confused with the nomenclature myself here when it comes to the gate train, so pardon me if I'm committing any mistake there. So this I believe is the third wheel, so I'm going to insert it there, and I'll make sure that it sits inside the jewel that is underneath there. Now the spring is trying to push it up, so once we put the plate to the top plate, that should go fine. Now I'll install it. I'll install the second wheel in this way, such that it fits into its jewel. Now that's a good fit. That is how the gate train is supposed to fit. And then next comes the escape wheel, which goes right in about there. Now there are a couple of jewels here. This is for the lever, this is for the balance wheel, and this is for the escape wheel. So make sure you're putting it in the right jewel there. So that is how the gate train is assembled. Once the gate train is in its place, I'll take the train bridge and I'll install it just so. It should just snap into its place. Just place it lightly and make sure you align it correctly. Now I'll hold it down with the pegwood, and I'll make sure that all the gear trains are in their respective locations. Now they're not, so what I need to do is I need to just slightly align them so that they all get into their proper jewels. Now here some magnification into the jewels should have to know whether the pivot is fit there or not, or if it's not in the jewel. So I just showed a diagram while before, which should help you understand what to look for. So I think, yeah, now that's a good fit. That's good enough. So if you're having difficulty fitting these in its place, what you can do is you can just take the moment in your hand and start aligning them from the side. So that can be a bit more easier, but this is technically correct because um, this is the technically correct method, because you're not inducing any kind of a dirt from your hands onto the moment. You can see it came out again, so I'll just push it back into its place. I'll just insert one screw first and then start aligning the rest of the parts. I'll tighten it. Now the train should not come out at this point, so I should be able to align the rest of the parts into their proper jewels. I'll just loosen this by a couple of turns. All this difficulty is caused because of the spring that is present in the middle. That spring is trying to lift this wheel up, and that is what is causing this difficulty. Also the fact that I cannot see if the pivots is sitting in the jewel or not from up here. The escape wheel is not yet properly in its jewel. It comes down to the escape wheel alone. Yeah, that's it. So now I should be able to insert the rest of the screws, and that should just secure the gate ring. Now if I just try to rotate one of the gears, the other should freely rotate. If I rotate the center wheel, there should be no friction, and the gate train should just rotate like that. That is what we're looking for. So at this point, what I prefer doing is to assemble the keyless work, so I know if the gate train is running properly or not. But that can be a bit difficult at times, so I'll go ahead and assemble the barrel bridge, and then let's go with the keyless works, which makes it a bit more easier. So to assemble the barrel bridge, what I'll do is first I'll lubricate this particular hole here where the barrel arbor would sit. One drop of oil on one side and the other drop here, and some more at the bottom. And the mainspring barrel which we assembled earlier, I'll get it out. And if you observe, there is a small gear that is machined around the outer circumference of the barrel itself. It is directly machined onto the barrel, so I'm going to clean that with a bit of Rodico, because when we wound the mainspring, we were holding it by our hands, and there is a good amount of chance that we have induced some or the other kind of dirt onto these gear teeth. Now this is what basically drives the whole watch, so that needs to be quite clean. Any dirt there can easily stop the watch. So once that is done, I'll just insert it there, insert it here, and push it into its proper place. Now if I just turn the center wheel, I should see that the barrel is also rotating. So that is what I want to see. That means to say that the barrel is engaging the center wheel. Now after that, I'll get the barrel bridge out. Now I'll use the Rodico to just clean. We just don't want any small dirt present on the watch moment. More so on this end, because the mainspring directly touches this part here. the barrel directly touches it, and also the mainspring here, because we don't have a lid. I'm going to place it right over there. Just like that, and this end of the arbor should just stick out of the barrel bridge right there. And I'm going to screw the whole thing in place. I don't know if this is the original screw to this particular bridge or not, but we have a short screw and we have a long screw. I believe that is how it is built, but anyway, I'm just going to install what screws we already had here. There goes one screw, and this is the other one. That's it. So once that is done, let us install the click. So to install the click, I'm going to take out the click as well as the screw of the click. Now this click screw is very different from the other screws, and note that there is a neck region here which has no thread cut on it. Now the click basically runs on this particular region, so you should insert this screw for the click and not any other screw, because this is the only screw on which it would work on. So the click itself, I'll just dip it once in Rodico. By dip, what I mean is I just push it into Rodico, and that should clean any small dirt that is present on it, just like that. And after that, I'm going to place a drop of oil in the part where the click moves here. Now one interesting thing about the Bifora 91 movement is that it doesn't have any kind of grooves cut for most of these parts, which means to say it runs directly without any kind of grooves. So these are just basically flat plates, and there are very few grooves like that. And here the neck area that I showed, I'm just going to place another drop of oil right there and install the screw. Now the click should engage the crown wheel just like that at that point, and let me just thread it into its place. Just like that. Okay. Sorry. Okay, you shouldn't let the screwdriver slip like that, but the issue is the screw head is a bit worn out. And before I install anything else, now I can easily work on the keyless works on the other side. That helps me know whether the gear train is going smoothly or not. So I prefer working on the keyless works now. So I'll get all the parts of the keyless works out now. Now these parts from the keyless works, we also have a spring right here, which is the troublemaker. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two particular parts, which is the winding pinion and the sliding pinion. Now I mentioned earlier that I'm going to discuss the sliding pinion in a bit more detail when I assemble it. So that's what I'm going to do. First I'll clean the winding pinion. Now in the winding pinion, you should be able to see there is an odd kind of a gear cut at this point right there on the center. I'm going to push that into Rodico and clean it, and I'm also going to clean the gear teeth on the outer periphery. And the gear cut I just showed, which is this, should go to the left. It should point towards the center of the watch. So that is how I'm dropping it. There is a slot here for this. I'm going to just drop it in there. Now if we had not installed the crown wheel along with the barrel bridge, this part would not stay there. It would just fall off from the other end, and that is the reason I installed it. Now here is the sliding pinion. The sliding pinion has two ends basically. I'll try to get it clearer here. It has two ends, if you can observe. On the right is something which is cut in a sawtooth fashion. On the left is a regular gear. So the portion on the right is installed on the winding pinion, and they should face each other, and that allows the winding and slipping of the watch when you rotate the crown in the opposite direction when you're not winding the watch. Now the other end engages with the setting wheel, and that is how you can set time. So I'm going to install it just like that, and I'm going to just clean the stem with Rodico. As I said, I'm not going to lubricate it now. I'm just going to push it right in there so that it should go through both the paths we've just installed, just like that. So the stem basically holds these two paths in their place. That's it, and that's what we want. Now the next thing we're going to install is the setting lever, which is basically this part right here. You'll see that it has a kind of a long stick, which is basically the button we pushed on the other end to release the stem. So that should go in the hole which is right here. I'll just clean this with Rodico, and I'll lubricate that hole. Lubricate this hole. Just a couple of drops of oil. I'm going to place the setting lever in such a way that it engages the stem on this end as well. So that is how it goes in, just like that. So now you should be able to see, if I just move the stem, the setting lever should move. Don't pull it out completely, just check if the setting lever is engaging or not. So after this, I'm going to install the yoke, and the yoke here comes from the top like that. So before I do that, I'm just going to lubricate that pillar again. So this is the pillar where the yoke would sit on. I'm sorry, I just put it in the opposite way. I should flip it. There is a point. There is a pointed thing here. If it's visible here, there is a small projection that should go down, and that should catch the sliding pinion, and that is what actually makes it slide on the stem, just like that. So that is how I need to install it. I'm sorry. Once that is in place, I don't think I've got the minute wheel out. Let me get that. I left the minute wheel inside the white petrol itself. So I cleaned it with Rodico. I took it out and cleaned it with Rodico. So this is what I'm going to install now. And I'll just place one drop of oil right there. There is a small hole in which the minute wheel is going to set. There is no jewel here, so let's just place a couple of drops of oil there. And I should place the minute wheel in such a way that a small gear on the top should face me. So this is how the minute wheel goes into its place, and it should engage with the cannon pinion. After that, the next wheel I'm going to install is the setting wheel. I'm going to clean it with Rodico again. After that, now usually you may get confused what way to put it in. Now I think it should work even if you put it anyway, but the proper way is to have the curved face of the wheel facing you. It may be hard to notice it in the video, but and actually you should be able to note the difference between the two phases. The curved face should usually face you. I'm going to lubricate this area right here. Okay. And I'll install this wheel. Just so. Once all these are in place, I'm going to push the setting lever to its extreme position, to its to this position, to the rightmost, and I'm going to push the sliding pinion in as well, and I'll take the spring I need to install, and that is a delicate part. Now to install the spring, I have placed it on the movement in the orientation it's supposed to go in. Now I'm going to place one end of the spring to the place where it is supposed to be in, which is there, and I'm going to hold it down with a piece of pegwood and I just cross my fingers that it doesn't jump. I'll hold it down and just push the other end in there. That's it. That was easy. So that's all you have to do basically, and that is a good fit. Now don't move it until you put the SLS or sitting lever spring into its place. I'll just clean the SLS quickly with Rodico, and I'm just going to place it over there. Before that, I'll place a couple of drops of oil on the minute wheel, because that is going to have some friction with the SLS. And the way it comes in here, it's basically this. Now here you may have a bit of difficulty or a bit of friction here. You just need to pull this part of the sitting lever not too hard, so that it just settles into its place. And once you're okay with that, you can just install the screw. Just install the screw right here. There is a screw hole right here. The SL is not yet properly in place for some reason. Yeah, that is better. Now I'm going to put the screw here and just tighten it. So okay, that's good. So what we'll do now is we'll just check if the functions work correctly. The click should work correctly. I mean, what I mean is when I pull the stem, it should go into the setting position. When I push it in, it should go to the winding position. Now since I don't have the mainspring in there yet, it's not, which is perfectly alright. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a drop of oil right at this point where this projection interacts with the SLS. I'm just going to do this several times so that the oil gets spread, and clean the excess off. That's it. Now almost run out of oil in my oil cup. I'll just replace some oil. So my habit is I just clean the old oil out and then put in new oil. Three to 4 drops of oil should be sufficient for the whole watch. So now let me lubricate train, and I had shown this diagram as to how the gear train is to be lubricated. So we know now that the pivot is sticking out in the oil cup right here, and we need to place the oil drop in such a way that the surface tension just takes this shape. The oil just takes this shape due to surface tension. It should not be till the brim, it should not be too less. That is how we need to place the oil. Now what I do is I just take oil in the pin or the oiler, and I place it right there, and if there is any excess, I just make the end of the Rodico a bit pointed, and I'm just going to tap it off. That should remove any excess. So now if we observe, we should be able to see the oil just as a small ring. Now it reflects as a small ring of light when the light falls directly on it. I'm not sure of how good it is visible on the camera, but we are looking for a small ring of oil around the pivot inside the jewel hole. That's what I'm going to do for all the other jewels. Now the B-91 has a wide oil cup, so it should be easier to oil this, but some moments the oil cup is so narrow that it's a headache to oil it with ease. So that should be good. I'll just place a small drop of oil underneath the crown wheel, so that should reduce the friction there. And I'll go to the other end of the movement, and the same gears which we lubricated here, we should have bottom jewels right here. We have 3 jewels, and is this a jewel? Yeah. So we have 4 jewels, 1 2 3 4. That is what we're going to lubricate, but this jewel is for the pallet lever, which we have not yet installed, so let's lubricate that later. Let us just lubricate the remaining ones. These are way deeper than the jewels on the other side, so they can take in a lot more oil. Anything excess, we'll just clean it off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the stem into the time setting position. I'm just going to run it just like that a couple of times. You should be able to see that the sound is a lot smoother than it used to be. That is a sign of good lubrication, and there's no friction that I can feel here. That's what I'm looking for. There should be no friction. And once that is done, we need to install the other troublesome spring, which is the click spring, into its place. Now I installed the click beforehand, so it would be a little bit tricky to install the spring right now. To make my job easier, what I did is I removed the click off camera, and that makes it easier for me to install the spring. Though even though it's possible the other way, there is a good possibility that the spring is going to jump off. Now this particular spring has a small upward bending portion right here where I'm pointing, and that needs to come here. That needs to come here, and that should interact with the click, and that is how I'm going to place the click. I'm going to place the other end of the click in first. The click spring, pardon me. I'm going to place this end in first. I'm going to hold that down by pegwood. Use the other piece of pegwood that I have, just so, and I'm going to push the other end in. That should make it a lot easier. Once that spring is in its place, it should look somewhat like this. Once that is in its place, I'm going to replace the click just where it's supposed to be, right about there. So I'm placing it upside down, so just place it like that. And put the screw in. And just one drop of oil under the click. I'm sorry, that got spread here. Just one drop under the click. That should do the job. Now the next thing I'm going to install is the ratchet wheel and the ratchet wheel screw. Once that is in place, we should be able to wind the watch and see how well the mainspring works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the ratchet wheel and I'm going to clean it with Rodico. Now it would be a bit tough to tell which portion of the ratchet wheel is up and which is down, but hardly I think it matters. There is no groove or anything cut, but you can install it either way. It should just be the same. So what I do is I usually look for the mark left by the screw, mark left by tightening of screw, and that part I just place it facing me. Now here you can see the cutout in the middle is box shaped. It is box shaped, or it's square shaped, and the arbor which is sticking out right here is also square shaped. I'm going to put a drop of oil in there in the middle where it gets sucked in, and a couple of drops here on the plate itself where the ratchet wheel would run. I should just be able to install the ratchet wheel, just so. That's it. And now I'll install this spring, this screw. That's place. Now the click works. I'll just place 1 drop of oil underneath the screw, because there is a friction between the ratchet wheel and the screw itself. And same thing goes true for the crown wheel. Our aim is to reduce the wear as much as possible. Now, even though it's not best recommended to do, what I do usually is I just wind the watch a couple of turns and make sure that the watch unwinds just like that at a very fast pace, and that is going to give me a good idea. The other thing I look for is the cannon pinion right here. The cannon pinion should rotate with the relative amount of ease. If there is an issue with the cannon pinion, what we'll have is a running watch with the seconds hand running and the minutes hand and hour hand stationary. So we don't want that, so I just do this to check if the cannon pinion is fitted correctly, and if the mainspring is good, and if the gear train altogether is good. So the next thing I'm going to install is the lever and the lever cock, and I'll get those parts out. The screw for the balance wheel and the lever is different, and you should note that. First thing I'm going to clean is the lever itself. It's usually called as pallet lever. I'm just addressing to it as lever. There are 2 pivots, the fork at the back. These are the things that I want to clean. And one more thing that I think I mentioned earlier is to make sure that the jewels are not loose here. I mean, the pallet stones are not loose here. If it is loose, you won't have a running watch. So I'm going to install it into its jewel right there. Should sit properly in its jewel, just like that. Just get a close up. That is how the lever should fit. Once that is in its place, I'm going to clean the lever cock with Rodico, and I'm going to place it in its proper orientation. One of the advantages of having something to keep the movement on like this is that you can rotate it in any direction you want, and you can adjust it in any way you want in which you're comfortable to work on the watch. I'm trying to set the lever cock in its place. Center the lever just about there. And, let the lever cock go in there. I should be able to align it perfectly. Just so. Now, before the video cut off, I was able to install the pallet lever in its proper orientation, just so. And that is how the lever should sit in its place. And once I'm sure that the lever is properly in its jewel, what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw it into its place. There is a screw hole right here. I'm going to drop the screw in and tighten it. Make sure that the lever still operates correctly. Yep. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lubricate the lever, the jewels of the lever. There is one jewel on this end, and there is the other one that I pointed out a little earlier on the other end. Now this takes in a lot lesser oil than the other jewels of the gate train. So I'm just going to fill it just like I've explained before. Any excess oil, just wipe it off. On this and on this end we have another jewel. Let's fill that with oil, wipe the excess out. Now once the pallet lever is in place, the thing that I'm going to look for is whether the pallet lever moves freely. So what I'll do is I'll just apply a little bit of pressure, and it should immediately jump to the other end, and the same from the other end as well. So it should move with a relative amount of ease. And I think I'm not wound the watch. I'll wind the watch completely, just like that. And if it's slipping there, if it's not winding completely, that means to say there's an issue with the mainspring. Now you can see that if I just touch the lever, it jumps to the other position, and that is what we want to see. If I just shake the lever like that, the escape wheel should just run. Now I realized a bit late that the whole part after I installed the lever in place was not properly recorded. I mean, the camera was completely out of focus and everything was blurry. So I have removed all the components from the watch, I mean the dial, hands and everything, and I'm going to re-record this whole segment. Now the lever is installed in its place and I can see that I can push it from side to side with ease. It should jump from side to side with a little bit of pressure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a drop of oil and I'm going to place a single drop right there on the entry pallet, which is the jewel on the left, the pallet jewel on the left, right there. The small straight stick like thing that you see on the pallet lever, that is the entry pallet, and that is where I've placed a drop of gel on its side face. And now I'm going to swing it to and fro till the escape wheel completes one complete rotation. In that way the oil is spread throughout the escape wheel. Now this is not a must, but it's a good habit. That should be enough. And the way in which I installed the balance, this is one thing I've made a lot of changes since my previous video, because then I didn't know the proper procedure. Now I think this is a much better way to install the balance. Now what I'm going to do is, as I said, the lever can be swung from side to side, so I'm going to keep the lever to my left just like that, and the balance wheel, I'm going to turn it upside down like that so that the balance wheel just drops. And now I'm going to drop the balance staff's pivot right into the jewel, into the center jewel right there. Not in that position, but instead I'll rotate the movement itself by 90 degree. I'll align the balance cock with the stem right there and drop it. So once it sits in the jewel, I'll rotate it. Sorry. Now I'm going to place the balance cock such that it aligns with the stem right there, and once it's in there, I'm going to just lift it from above like that and rotate it by 90 degrees. Make sure that the balance wheel doesn't come out. Now align the balance wheel to be seated properly, also the balance cock. Now you can see that the balance wheel doesn't turn. That means to say the alignment is not correct. So I'm just going to lift the balance wheel up slightly, just very slight, and just turn it and let go of it. I turned it in the direction of the hairspring and just let go of it. You can see that the balance wheel has started to run. And now I'm going to install its screw. And tighten it completely. Now you can see that the balance wheel has a much better amplitude than it used to before we started the service, and that's what we'd like to see as well. And the watch is running quite good. I mean, the movement is running quite good. I'm going to turn it upside down now. Now the few things that I look for here is whether the watch still runs in this position. So that can be checked by these inspection windows. These two holes right here are for inspecting the interaction between the pallet lever or the pallet stones and the escape wheel. And this particular window here is to inspect whether the balance wheel is running or not. So you should be able to visually see if it's running or not. So after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a drop of oil right there. I've already placed it, and I'm going to clean the R wheel in Rodico like that, and also like that. That's it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lubricate the inside of the air wheel just about there. and I'm going to place it right here. Now make sure that it aligns with the minute wheel. It meshes with the minute wheel. So if I just pull it into the setting position and turn it, the hour wheel should start to rotate, and that's what we'd like to see. After that, I'm going to place the dial washer, and after that I can continue with the installation of the dial as before. Now the next thing I'm going to install is the dial itself. So the dial should be aligned in such a way that the small notch at the 3 o'clock position should be aligned with the stem right here. So I'm going to place it just like that, and it should just go into its place. If you're having some trouble, you may need to just rotate this particular screw, and that's it, it's in. Now I'm going to tighten the screw and this screw right here. The two screws that we used to remove the dial, we need to just tighten it so that the dial is held securely in its place. Now we have the dial installed, and make sure it's flush with the surface of the movement. And I've got the 3 hands here. The hour hand. I'm just going to push it down with my tweezers just like that, and I should be able to rotate it 360 degrees. And when you rotate that, make sure that it is not fouling or basically touching the logo right here. That is what we're going to look for. So I'm going to leave it exactly at 3 o'clock position. That's what I prefer doing. And I'll install the minute hand so that it points to the 12 o'clock position, which is basically the watch telling a time of 3 o'clock. And that is what I prefer to do. Once that is done, I have to rotate the hands and make sure they're not touching each other. And I'll check the alignment again in 6 o'clock position, 9 o'clock position, and at 12 o'clock they should get one on top of each other. I'll get it to 3 o'clock position again, back to 2, and that is where I stop it. And after that I'll install the seconds hand and just press it down. Now make sure that the seconds hand doesn't foul with the minute hand. So the 3 hands should not touch each other. The hour and the minutes hand are not fouling, and once the seconds hand is running, we should be able to see that. Even that would stay clear of the minutes hand. Yeah, that is good enough. And the reason why the watch was stopping was because my finger was on the balance wheel, which is not a good thing. And this is what we're basically looking for. There should be no fouling between any of the watch hands. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to get the case here. Now I have the case here, which I stored separately earlier. I'm going to remove the case back as well as the ring. Now I'll just clean the case, just clean it with a clean cloth. It's also a good thing to wash it with some detergent and some dishwashing soap, and then dry it thoroughly. Now drying it thoroughly is very important. We don't want any traces of water present here. It's good if you have an ultrasonic cleaner that does a better job. And I'll even clean the case back. Now I'll get the grease that I used earlier in installing the stem. I use this grease for all the works on the case. This is a lower quality grease than the one I used on the mainspring, so I use this for these kind of works. So what I'll do is I'll take a screwdriver, just like the one I used for the mainspring. I'm going to take some grease, not so much, just a little, and apply it just where the crown is sitting on the case, where it would sit on the case and on the case pipe as well, or what is also called as the pendant tube. I'll apply some grease there. And the other part that I'm going to grease, now whenever you're not working on the moment, just keep it covered. Now the other part that I'm going to grease is the rubber gasket that is installed right on this. Now it is a good idea to replace this gasket whenever you service a watch. I'll just see if this is bad, so I'll get a different gasket. We'll replace the gasket. I've got a different gasket, a replacement gasket that I had handy, which should fit this case back. Now it's good to have a lot of these gaskets. So the way I grease it is I'll just take some grease on my fingertips, and I'm just going to apply it all over this. Once it's greased, now this make sure that no dirt or to an extent rainwater would not get inside the case. I'm just going to use some old Rodico to clean the case back. I'll just rub it with Rodico. Whenever you use Rodico, one thing you should make sure of is that you're not leaving any residue of Rodico on any part, for that matter. Now I will install this gasket just like that, just as if you're putting a rubber band around this. Now I have the stem removed from the watch movement, and I have the gasket installed onto the case back. I'm also going to apply a little bit of more grease onto the threads itself. That should be enough, and I'm going to install the movement into the case. I'll just use some compressed air to clean any possible dirt that is in there. Also a bit more air on the dial. Just place the dial on it, and make sure that the hole where the stem goes in aligns with the pendant tube right here. And after that, I'm going to install this ring again. Clean it with the brush once, and a blast of air. That should be sufficient. Again, make sure that the surface you're keeping it on is quite good. Now here you should be able to see a small projection on this end, which should go in first, and then I should be able to drop the rest of it inside there. Yeah, just like that. And as I said before, I'm just going to clean the stem with a bit of Rodico again, and I'm going to lubricate it now. Now I have cleaned the stem with Rodico, and I'll take a bit of oil in my oil pen. Now I'm going to lubricate the parts of the stem. I'm going to lubricate the tip and the other parts of the stem, including this rectangular portion on which the sliding pinion would slide. Just a droplet of oil should be enough. A bit more here and here too. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push the stem into its proper hole right there. Okay, the moment is rotated. Okay. Now with it aligned, I'll just push the stem in and make sure it just locks into its place. If it doesn't, as I said earlier, just push this button and push it in. That should do the job. That's it. Okay, so once you're done with that, just a little bit of blast of air, both the case back and the case. I'll quickly write my name or signature and service number. I'm sorry, the date. That will be a good reference for me in the future. I'm having a bit of issue with my camera here, so I've already fit one turn of the case back. I'll have to wiggle it back and forth. You'll have to wiggle it back and forth till you're able to fit one turn, and after that you're just going to tighten it, and then with your heart tweezer or whatever the tool you use for the job. And now if you observe, I've set the time already off camera, and I've set it exactly in accordance with what I have on my mobile. I usually also have a habit of taking photo, so I'll let it sit for 24 hours and I'll check it later and I'll update you, and let's conclude the video. As I had mentioned earlier, I wanted to check the watch after 24 hours, but then I realized that I completed the whole work at 12:30 midnight yesterday, which would make it 12:30 midnight, which would make 24 hours 12:30 midnight today, and that's not a good time to sit down and work on a watch. And for that reason, what I thought is I'll just check it after 12 hours. So anyway, if we get an error, we just have to double it for the error we get for 24 hours. And you should be able to see that according to my the time on my mobile, we have completed 12 hours, and if we just match the time, it's 12:35 there, and even the watch is showing 12:35, and that is good enough for me. I don't have a time grapher, so this is the way I check if the watch is keeping proper time or not. The best way is to actually wear the watch, because the balance wheel runs on 2 to 3 different positions as you wear it, and the timing in each of these positions would vary when you move your hands. But well, I don't have a belt or anything right now for the watch, so this should be good enough for me. Some other time I need to I mean, I cannot wear this watch, it's a lady's watch, so I should ask my mother to wear it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open the case back now and make sure that the balance wheel still runs in a good fashion, just so. And at this point, if your watch has an error which is within 15-20 minutes of the actual time for 24 hours, then the way you need to adjust that is by moving this regulator right here. This is the regulator. This is for setting the beat. You shouldn't move this because the watch is already in beat. If it wasn't in beat, we can adjust it with this particular lever. That part I discussed yesterday, how to check whether the watch is in beat or not, so that can be adjusted with this. If the watch is not keeping proper time, then I'll adjust it with this. You should be able to see that there is a plus and there is a minus here. So if I push it to the right, or the bottom part of the regulator right here to the left towards the plus sign, that would make the watch go faster. If I push it towards minus, that will make the watch go slower. So knowing how much difference I'm having, whether the watch is lagging from the actual time or if it's faster than the actual time, I can either slow down the watch or make it speed up using this adjustment. But be aware that this adjustment is only for plus or minus 15 to 20 minutes usually, and anything greater than that, if it's in terms of hours or something like that, then there is definitely some other issue which is making the watch go that bad. Usually with the balance, now this has a bad balance stuff, it's not the best, but it will do the job right now. But if the balance stuff is too bad, then the watch can go fast. If the hairspring is fouling, if the balance wheel doesn't have this kind of an amplitude, if it's running at a very slow pace, then the watch will go fast. So usually if the balance wheel is slow, the watch will be fast. Now one more thing I have to check for in the balance wheel is if I stop the balance wheel, if the watch is good, if it's in beat, you can see as soon as I remove my tweezers, the wheel starts by itself. I don't have to push it or anything, even if I hold there for a moment and leave it, and that's something that's a good sign. So now I'm going to put the watch back in after I'm sure it's keeping good time. So as I mentioned yesterday, there is a small projection right here, right about there, and that has to go inside a small slot that is provided in the case. Now almost all Jayco watches had this, so that is the way I need to install it. And after that, I'm just going to blast some air, not too much on the moment, just a little, but a lot more on the case back. And the way I'm going to close it, because I was not able to discuss it properly before due to a few issues with my camera, is to just place the case back first. Then what I usually prefer doing is I take my heart tweezers just like that, rotate it to the left as if you are trying to open the case back, and let it settle. onto the threads. Now you have to wiggle it back and forth a couple of times until it settles, and once it's settled I can start tightening it. Now just so that it is just tight enough, not too much, just that much should be sufficient. And now you can set the time. If it's not showing the proper time, you can set the time. As I mentioned before, I prefer taking a photograph, acts as a good reference when I'm checking it 24 hours later. And that's how this watch is serviced right now. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is not the best method there is, or the best video there is to service a watch, but I've discussed whatever I know, and I'm still learning. I'm no professional, so please follow the steps at your own discretion. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comments. And also there are a lot more resources available online. You can refer them. One more thing is, if this is your first time or second time working on a mechanical watch or any other watch, make sure it's not something that is dear to you, or if it's not or it's not something that is very costly. So even if you end up spoiling the watch, you won't regret doing that, because the first few watches you work on, if you're doing it by yourself, then there's a large possibility that you'll end up damaging the watch. So be careful while doing that. Anything else, please let me know. This is Ulas, and I'll be more than glad to help you. Thank you for watching the video. I hope it's not too long and boring. Thanks again.